Good morning, everybody. I've got a couple of things to touch on this morning, but I came across this article overnight. I was reading and I saw this and I thought, what? Can this happen? Apparently it can happen. This is CTV London, sorry. Judge decides against mandatory minimum for human trafficking sentence. Two Kitchener men who pled guilty in connection with a human trafficking ring were not given the mandatory minimum sentences after appealing to the court that it would be, quote, cruel and unusual punishment. Minas Abera and Nicholas Kalowski, both 20 years old, will be going to prison. Abera will be behind bars for 3 years, while Kalowski will serve less than 30 months. The Crown has been seeking 8 years with the mandatory minimum set at 4 years, but the lawyers for both men argued that under the Charter of Rights, it would be deemed, quote, cruel and unusual punishment. Justice Kevin McHugh said even though, quote, the right-thinking Canadian would be outraged by the sentence of 4 years, he agreed it was excessive. Another man, just a quick aside there, I believe that I'm a right-thinking Canadian, and I don't think that 4 years is excessive for doing what these 20-year-old adults did. Okay, back to the article. Another man who was more involved with the human trafficking incident previously received the mandatory minimum. So the third guy in their little ring received the mandatory minimum, but these two didn't? Okay, back to the article. Chris Uwabo, the lawyer for Araba, said it's a serious charge, but our position in this is given the facts. In this case, the mandatory minimum is far too much custody, and the court supported that finding. The lawyer for Kalowski, Francis Brennan, adds both of the accused were just barely adults themselves, and one of the most important things that is that youthful offenders typically deserve mitigation under the criminal code. In human trafficking cases where there's a mandatory minimum, how often do people guilty of drug offenses get off with less than the mandatory minimum when we had mandatory minimum? This stinks. This stinks a lot. There's a video, and I'm not going to play the video, but if you play the video and see the accused, well, you won't be surprised. I wanted to point this out before our next story. This is Tom Quiggin, and this was tweeted this morning, or yesterday morning, the 22nd. And here's the list of nations rejecting the Global Compact on Migration. Tom Quiggin says, quote, the following countries are rejecting the Global Compact on Migration: Australia, Belgium. Belgium's government fell because of this. Denmark, Italy, United States, Hungary, Austria, Bulgaria, Poland, Israel, Dominican Republic, Estonia, Czech Republic, Croatia, Slovenia, Slovakia, Russia, Korea, Japan. This isn't a far-right conspiracy. Every single one of these governments cited national sovereignty and security as the reasons for their concerns with the language in the Global Compact for migration and their reasons for not signing. We have a legitimate concern. Here's Israel. This is 6 weeks of yellow vests protesting in Paris, and it is insanity. I've seen pictures of Parisian police officers pulling weapons on unarmed civilians who are protesting in yellow jackets, like in yellow vests. It seems insane to be okay with a militarized police force that has no problem pulling weapons on an unarmed civilian population when it suits them, while at the same time going crazy when somebody like the president of Syria uses chemical weapons on their citizens, right? It's okay for the French to do it when the EU's behind it, but it's not okay for Assad to do it when they want to invade Syria. Here's a Daily Mail report. France prepares last resort chemical weapons that can be smothered around Paris to keep yellow vest rioters away from key buildings as anti-Macron protests continue. Shouldn't the people have a say? Shouldn't the people be allowed to say we don't like you in whichever fashion they want, up to a certain point? Obviously, I'm not saying destruction of property or violence is okay, but keeping the yellow vests away from certain buildings with chemical weapons seems like a red line. Why was it a red line in Syria? Why is it unacceptable for dictators and despots to do, but just perfectly okay for the EU and France to say, yeah, we're going to put chemical weapons around these buildings because they're more important than your rights? Weird, right? That's very strange. So you're allowed to protest up to a point, and then we're going to chemically bomb you, or we're going to put these chemical weapons here so you'll be affected if you come near it. That's crazy. Here's Oil Sands Action tweeting the most environmentally responsible top 10 oil exploiting countries on Earth: Canada. And here's protests. This is December 22nd, 7:04 a.m. So this presumably wasn't yesterday, but these protests are happening over the weekend, right? And people are sharing the amount of people coming out. This is not small. These are not right-wing. This is not a conspiracy The rebel is reporting it, but the rebel is reporting factual information as far as I can tell. So it's very interesting to continue to see Justin Trudeau and his liberal ministers continuing to push the line that it's a right-wing conspiracy, and that they chuckle when they say it gives away our sovereignty. It does give away our sovereignty. It enforces, or it compels judges to cite the Global Compact on migration when ruling on domestic cases. So it's de facto become Canadian law. Do you understand how that works? It's the language in the Global Compact isn't this becomes this takes away your sovereignty. They'd never get it passed. What it does is it encourages judges who agree with it to cite it. And that has happened. If you're not sure of an example, the carbon tax and everything to do with carbon and the Paris Agreement, that's also a non-binding agreement. We don't have to do anything with regards to that. So it's and we are doing stuff that is negatively affecting our economy in huge ways, demonstrable ways. It's very, very, very harmful to our economy. And yet Justin Trudeau moves forward with it. BC has had a carbon tax since 2007 or 2008. The first full year with the carbon tax, I believe, was 2009, and they had it every year. And since then, and their emissions have gone up. The United States does not have a carbon tax, and their emissions have gone down. This seems like shoving a solution that doesn't work down our throats and that nobody wants. Yellow Vest protests reach Israel as hundreds demonstrate in Tel Aviv. And I'm just going to keep it's loud and stuff. But yeah, like this is not a conspiracy theory when there are multiple countries in the world doing exactly the same thing. This isn't a conspiracy. This isn't bad information. The people giving us bad information is the current ruling, or the current government in charge, the current majority government. The liberals are in bed with the globalists, and they are a globalist government. It's scary. Here is the Yellow Vest protest in Israel. Okay, that was the same video I was just showing you, so I'm not going to go through that again. Here is CTV News reporting on the convoys, and it doesn't mention anti-Trudeau rally. It just says one little line about Trudeau, and I'll show you. So here's the CTV News. Convoys in support of oil industry continue to roll through Alberta and Saskatchewan. And the whole article doesn't mention anything about Trudeau until the very end, and it's a very short article. It says convoy in support of oil industry continue in Alberta and Saskatchewan, and convoys of trucks rolled slowly through Alberta and Saskatchewan on Saturday as demonstrators in support of Canada's ailing oil and gas sector continue. And then jumps down, it says, an organizer of the convoy in Medicine Hat says trucks were driving slowly to show people, quote, the frustration of how slow the oil fields are. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe tweeted his support for the event in Estevan, saying people across Western Canada are fed up with what he calls the Trudeau government's indifference towards the energy sector. And that is putting it mildly, CTV. Are you making sure you're in line for that government handout? $500 million? Hooey! It's a lot of money. Make sure you don't insult the Prime Minister. He's very touchy, I hear. His potato-shaped faces. Anyway, that's it for this morning. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. I hope you finish off the shopping and enjoy this Christmas Eve. Check out the peoplespartyofcanada.ca. You might like what Maxime Bernier has to say, but you won't know until you look. And tell a friend, too, over Christmas. They might like him as well.